And now I've got the pleasure of introducing Monica. I'm excited to welcome Monica Hall. Monica is both an adoptee and a birth mother. She was born in Canada, adopted by American parents, and raised in Anchorage, Alaska. She spent the first 16 years of her life in Alaska, where she had many of the foundational experiences that drive her writing. Monica has founded several successful companies and currently works in marketing. She's also a speaker and a life coach. 1 year ago, she published her first memoir titled Practically Still a Virgin. I've got it right here. It looks like this. Um, an adoption memoir. The book has been met with acclaim and has over 100 five-star reviews on Amazon. Monica now travels and speaks to groups about people writing their stories. In fact, she's presenting on that topic at our conference here in Cleveland in a little less than a month. I will be putting a link to that conference in the chat as well. Monica has 3 grown children. She lives in Sacramento, and I will be putting her links in the chat as she gets going. So with that, I give you Monica. Thanks.
Thank you so much for inviting me. So there's a lot to dig into with my story because I'm both an adoptee and a birth parent. Birth mother is how I've always framed it. That's the way, I think when I was adopted, it was natural mother for a long time. And so anyway, it's a thing. I'm also a birth mother. And, people have asked me, what was more traumatic? And it's kind of hard to unwind that because I was already an adoptee with, difficulty with identity and self-worth and self-esteem, probably amplified by I was an alcoholic waiting to happen, who knows? But then I relinquished a child. So I relinquished the only known blood relative that I had. And so it's, what came first, the chicken or the egg? But what I can say, being a birth mother, and if you've read my memoir, and I don't know how many here have read it, anybody, I know Betsy has. When you read it, there's a lot more to the story. There always is, right? And so, and she kind of alluded to that a little bit in the introduction, but I have a lot of trauma that I created on my own or that I knowingly went into or not unknowingly. I think I just had a little bit of a screw loose from the beginning. And part of that was where I was adopted. I was adopted by older people. They had moved to Alaska in the 40s, 1947. They were from California. And so my mom would be 100 in June, and my father would be 110 if they were still alive. And my mom died about 5 years ago. So I was raised in the area by older people that had the old time mentality, and not to mention my mother's family, they were alcoholics and they had to hide their knives from their parents. So she came from trauma. My father had been, and this is part of how I was able to unwind and come to some acceptance, not necessarily, certainly forgiveness, but compassion, right? Compassion is where I ended up, because I had to understand why people did the things they did. Why did they hurt me? And why did I hurt others? There's a saying, we're only as sick as our secrets. Hurt people. And my father's mother had gotten knocked up by the town drunk, and she left him. His grandparents ended up adopting him, and she went off to be in the theater. She became a Ziegfeld Follies girl, and I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but I actually found that she had a Wikipedia page the other day. So he didn't really know his mom, and back then the dancers and actors and such in the 20s and 30s were especially the 20s, were the underpinnings of society. So he was abused in his home, from what I can see. And so these are the people that adopted me. And I was adopted out of a foster home in Canada. There were 11 babies there, 12, I don't know. I saw some notes somewhere. And one of the babies was not expected to live. He was a year old, and there was one woman caring for them. So I don't know if I was there for just display purposes or if I was there, to be picked out, or she'd been caring for me. I don't know anything about the first 4 months of my life, but they took me to Alaska and everything seemed to be fine. I don't have any memories other than when we got my brother. When the adoption stork dropped off my brother, that was tough. So my mom and my brother, they never separated until my mom died. He never moved out. He was high need and she was codependent. And so I was kind of left on my own at 3. And I resented it. I resented him. I lost my mommy. And my dad swooped in. And that's a whole nother conversation. But he saved me. He was the one that told me I was smart and that I was special, basically love bombed me. But my my brother and my mom, when we were talking, when I was writing my memoir, and I was doing a lot of research, I started writing in 2016. I asked my mom and my brother, I'd been having reoccurring dreams before, and she said, and they thought it was funny because when they walked out of the hospital and she was carrying my brother in her arms, she looked down at me, and it was the first time that I realized that he was in her arms and I wasn't. And she said I had a horrified look on my face. And I believe that was absolute trauma. I lost my third mother by then. I didn't really exactly know. But I just kind of spiraled. As a little kid, I guess I was happy. I was on my own a lot, and I wanted to do well and make them proud. We were very Catholic family. The Virgin Mary was everywhere in our house. I was named Mary Monica after the Virgin Mary. We went to every Holy Day mass, and it was a culture in our life. So about junior high school time, I had some major trauma. And some of that was perpetrated by my father. And some of it was sexual, and some of it was physical. I was also raped when I was 15 by a heroin addict who was somebody that I had known. He was a friend of my best friend's big brother's. I had this virginity complex because of the way my father had groomed me. Virginity was a thing, right? And so I got pregnant. And back then, what they did is they put you in the house and locked the door. You didn't get out. And this was Alaska. So Alaska, let me preface Alaska for you, give you a little picture of Anchorage, Alaska in the 70s. It was an oil boom town. People came to Alaska to escape, to hide, to start something new, to have freedoms. There was little law there. My parents went up there because they wanted freedom. My father probably wanted to gamble, and there's lots of prostitution up there. So I was sneaking out my window when I was a teen, and a lot of that has to do with the trauma that was happening at home. And that's what happened. I got raped, and I didn't tell anybody. And so there was horrible shame around on that whole thing, being Catholic and not telling my parents. For the first time, I never told them. I mean, back in my growing up, you didn't look. If you looked, rolled your eyes, would never have, I would have been killed if I'd been rolled my eyes. You had to look them in the eye. Yes, mama, no, daddy. It was just a whole different era. And I was the first time I actually defied them, and I refused to tell them who it was. And I had a lot of shame around that because they thought maybe I was, promiscuous, and I wasn't. So that was a really dark time. And I had gotten into some juvenile delinquent behavior. And, this is the thing I know about life. I've had a lot of life, and I have a lot of life experiences, and that we have choices all the time. We can go right, we can go left, we can go straight, we can do so many different things. We have choices about what we think, who we talk to, what we do, our decisions, life decisions. And it was an absolute miracle that I got knocked up and locked up. Because had I not, I never might not be here today. I was headed really down a bad road, and it stopped all my delinquent behavior. I couldn't go anywhere. My friends really didn't come around. And it was dark during the summer, I mean, during the winter in Alaska, and I was locked away. And I became really close with my mom because she was the only friend I had. And even though they had me go see a nun who was going to find parents for my baby. And when I was writing my memoir, because I would send it back and forth to a developmental editor. She was in Wisconsin, I'm in Sacramento, California. And this was somebody I didn't know. I found her online. It was a referral. And she'd say, okay, write a scene about when they told you that you were going to give your baby up for adoption. I mean, that, and I'm like, there was never a scene. And she couldn't understand that. But adoption was normalized in my family. My brother was adopted. I was adopted. It was just the thing you did in 1972, 73, when a Catholic girl got knocked up. You gave your baby away. And so there was never, I don't remember ever being a discussion. It was sort of like break an arm and get a cast kind of thing. And, all I wanted to do was meet my baby. And that's the only thing I could do is try to plan a way for that to happen. And back then adoptions were closed, and I wrote in a journal. And I schemed about, well, maybe we can go to a bank and then we can put the information at the bank so that they wouldn't be worried about me taking my baby back. Because my mom had been terrified that she'd lose me, that the birth mother would come back and want to take me back. So I had been groomed to protect my mom, So suffice it to say, I left the hospital without my daughter. They did let me see her because I told them that was the only power I had. You can't have her unless I can see her. And they did let me see her, and then I left her. And it's today, I mean, I went through EMDR, eye movement reprocessing desensitization during 2020 with a therapist. And I had 11 big T traumas. Like a big T trauma is like a rape or, an abduction attempt or big stuff, right? I had 11. And there is nothing that touches the pain and the grief of losing a child to adoption. That's my experience. And it's shameful. People hide, they don't want to talk. It's a disenfranchised grief. It's not something that you can talk to anybody about. My parents didn't take me to a therapist. They don't take you to, you don't get a death certificate. There's no funeral. There's no, casseroles at your door. Nobody, it's just, you're supposed to forget it and move on. And so it's this imploding grief and shame that you can't do anything with. Many people end up, becoming addicts, alcoholics, committing suicide, getting sick. I mean, we've got to let go of our pain. We've got to be able to release the pain in some way. And how I did it is I started drinking. I started using drugs. We moved here to the lower 48, Fair Oaks, where I live now, when I was 9 months after my daughter was relinquished. And it was okay for a minute. I went to high school. I started my senior year in high school. I had been taken out of school for my sophomore year, went back from half of my junior year, and then we traveled looking for a place to live in the lower 48. And, I just wanted to be normal. And you're just not normal. You're not normal when you're an adoptee. You're not normal when you're, a birth mother. I'd come to school and I had shared during the summer with a girl because I couldn't talk to my mom about it. If I mentioned it to my mom, she'd cry, and I didn't want to make my mom cry, So it was, and I remember, when I started writing my memoir, there's things that I it was crazy because it's like a little thread, you'll pull a memory and then there's more that comes. And I remember when I was maybe 17 or so, and that's the age I was on the cover of this book. I was 17, and that's my senior year picture. And I look sad, and I was. Uh, I was broken, like broken, and I remember looking at women holding their babies, they have a toddler in their arms or they got a kid in the stroller, they pick them up and they kiss them on the head, forehead. It's an automatic response. I can't pick up a baby without kissing a baby today, right? And I would look at them with such envy and almost and jealousy, and they don't realize how lucky they are that they can do that. And so there was nowhere for that to go. And I ended up drinking and using cocaine and stuffing my feelings. And finally, in 1984, I'd done everything I could to, bury myself. And I finally hit a bottom. I couldn't lower my standards fast enough, and they caught up with me. And I ended up getting sober. And so that was 41 years ago, March 21st, so next month. In fact, when I'm presenting at this conference will be my 41st sobriety birthday, and that Friday. And what a great place to celebrate. And so in 2006, let me kind of close this up a little bit. When in 1980, I had married for a minute. Like, I was with him 2 years, but we were married a month. And I had really bad picker. My boyfriends, my husbands were not good. But anyway, this particular guy, I think I was with him because we had a business and I had some means to find my birth family. And back in 1980, it was obviously no internet. It was all, sending letters. And I joined ALMA, Adoptee Liberty Movement Association, and they helped me put together a search binder and a plan. And I did find my biological family within 4 months. And I'm a sleuth, let me tell you. My second book right now, I'm putting it together because that couldn't fit in the first book. And I'm a sleuth. Maybe it's an adoptee thing, we want to know. But I needed the answers to a lot of things. And so I found my biological family, and then I drank and used, and finally got sober in 84. And then in 91, my daughter turned 18. And I could not wait. Like, I would tell everybody, she's gonna be 18, she's gonna be 18. I told everybody. It wasn't like a shameful thing for me, like I had a baby and give it up for adoption. It was like, I had a baby and I can hardly wait to meet my daughter. She's gonna look just like me, she's gonna be just like me, I know she will. And then people started giving me pushback. How do you know she's gonna want to find you? What if she doesn't want to find you? Maybe you should wait and see if she wants to find you. I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm not waiting. I know she want to find me. And so I called the adoption agency in Anchorage, Alaska, 6 months before she turned 18 because I couldn't wait another second. And they answered and they said, well, and by the way, adoption was open. Not open, but there was no closed records in Alaska. I don't know how long, but certainly back in 1991, they were open. So I didn't know that you couldn't get all that information in Alaska. And so they said, write us a letter and we'll forward it to her parents when she's 18, like 6 more months. And if they're open to it, we'll facilitate a reunification. So I hung up. I'm like, oh my God, I got to write a letter. How do you write a letter? I mean, I still had so much shame, right? The shame of having to give my baby away. And these adoptive parents were so much, they had money, and they had, they were so much bigger than me, so much better than me, right? And I had such a little self-worth and self-esteem. And so about a week or so later, it was very short, the adoption agency called me, and I was at work, and she said, we're really sorry it's taken us so long to get back to you. I'm like, back to me? I'm not expecting anything. okay. And she says, well, we have a picture here. I go, picture of who? Of a young girl, your daughter. Like, and okay, I never cried. I left that hospital and I turned and looked at the blue walls of Providence Hospital as we drove away. And I just said to myself, I just won't think about it right now. I just won't think about it right, because it was too painful. It was too, I felt like I was gonna die. Like I was gonna die. And so I had to push it down, and I never cried. If you read my memoir, there's a chapter called Rats, Rats, Rats. That's the only crying I did when my rats were killed. It's a great story, actually. But I think that was I was crying for my daughter, and I couldn't after I left. I was just, it was too much. I thought I would die if I cried. And so all of the tears came out at once when she said, I have a picture of your daughter. I mean, for the first time in my life, I was speechless. Like there was, snot and tears, and I could not see to hang up the phone. Oh, okay, and people rushed to my cubicle. Are you okay? What's wrong? Who died? And I couldn't even speak because it all came out at once. And I'm going to go back to something here really quick. I had all those journals, remember? So in 1984, when I got sober, I realized that I've been stuffing things, and I should at least cry. I should have a good cry about the adoption, right? And so I pulled out my journals out of the closet, and I opened to when we left her at the hospital, and I couldn't grab any emotion from it. So then I called my mom, and because my mom was a really good writer and she'd also kept a journal. So I asked her, and she let me, read her journal. And when I opened it, and it was so, you could tell the elongated, it was really, the writing had changed because it was really emotional. And I could feel the emotion coming. Like it started coming. I could feel the tears coming up. And then it was like a faucet just was slowly being shut off. I'd stuffed them so long I couldn't access them. And that was probably in 1986. I had already had a child. The first baby I got to keep, she just turned 40. And I thought sometime after that, maybe the nun will give me a little information now that I have my own child, and it won't be like I'm gonna try to take her back, right? So I did have a couple little pictures of her. And that's a very interesting story. It's so weird, I thought the picture I got, I thought when I saw a picture of my daughter, I'd know instantly and feel this overwhelming feeling, and I didn't. They sent me the wrong picture. They sent me a picture of her sister. I found out years later. Duh, so anyway, I mean, the girl looked like she could be me. She had the same kind of short, dark hair. I'm indigenous, actually. I have dark hair under here. And so anyway, I couldn't grasp that until they called. And then I went home and I rented every sad movie that I had shunned for 18 years. I mean, Blockbuster, when those sad movies about someone dying or a child or something like that, I would not watch them. Oh, hell no, I'm not watching that. And I never really looked at why am I not willing to watch those. I couldn't access that pain. It was like Pandora's box, right? And so I sat and watched every sad movie I could for a couple weeks and leaned into the pain and cried. And when she called me for the first time, we exchanged letters first. And when she called me for the first time, it was like catching up with an old friend. She said it was 2 hours, and she said, I didn't have to ask you anything. You answered everything because I'm an adoptee. I knew what she'd want to know, exactly what she'd want to know. Same things I would have wanted to ask my own mother, who I never got to because she was deceased. She died when I was 7. So I knew what she wanted. So fast forward 2016, my daughter, Becca, the one I got to keep, who's now 40, she was over. She was pregnant with my grandson, and she said, Mom, you should write a memoir. And I'm like, what? And she goes, no, really, fascinating story. You were adopted, and then you gave Mary up for adoption, and then you found your family, and then you found Mary. People would be fascinated. And I thought to myself, that's not what I need to figure out. That was lived experience. There was other things that I needed to understand. And I went through this process, and I can tell you, there's a number of ways that if you want to write, and there's a number of reasons to write, definitely sign up for the conference presentation we're going to do. But my first thought was, I'll get a ghostwriter. I have all these journals. I have kept appointment books back as early as 1973. I have everything. I can tell you when my husband didn't come home. I can tell you what time he showed up, in 1980. I can tell you so many things because it's all in these journals and these appointment books. And I intuitively knew, I think, that I was going to write my story someday because I've been holding all this stuff. I carry things around from house to house. And so first thought was, I'll get a ghostwriter. I need a ghostwriter. I've never written anything except, clinical stuff. I barely made it through high school. I was never great in school. I didn't have good attention span. I've certainly been very successful in business and such, but it was never because of my education. And so I asked my girlfriend, I said, do you know a ghostwriter? And she said, why don't you write it yourself? I'm like, she goes, haven't you ever written before? I go, yeah, in my journals. And I pointed over to the shelf, and there were these old cloth covered journals sitting there that I had just reorganized the day before and set them out, found them and set them out because they were cute. They were pretty. They looked kind of vintage, they were old. And I grabbed it and I go, yeah, like my journal when I was 15. And I handed it to her and I didn't expect her to, but she opened it and started reading it out loud. And I went, like, I had never accessed that stuff. That was just like startling that she was reading it out loud. And so getting this developmental editor was incredible because I would write something and then I'd send it to her and she'd have me dig. Now, if you're in recovery or you're, you've got suicidal ideation or any of those things, I don't necessarily recommend going at it like that because I have never really had any of that or depression, but it was a really, really hard time. And I had some hard stuff to look at, the secrets I'd kept, the reoccurring dreams, things that had happened. Obviously the sexual assault, the thing that I still felt was my fault, the adoption, there was so much. And she would say, show me, don't tell me. And she was able to see things that I couldn't, that my mind had protected me from. What I recommend, and writing is so powerful for healing. For me, I needed to write it all. Like I wrote probably 500,000 words. My memoir is probably 80,000. It's the size of a novel, but I had to write everything so that I could see it. I had to understand it. And it was so powerful for me. And I never blamed anything on my birth mother for some reason. I never was angry at her for giving me away. I just wanted to know her. I wanted to meet her. I wanted to ask her why, I got to talk to her husband and he told me some things that, that he knew. He met her right after I was relinquished. But there's so much I didn't understand. And I think that understanding brings compassion, at least for me. I needed to know why my adoptive mother didn't protect me from my dad. I wanted to know why she was mean to me. And now I saw something I couldn't see. She was jealous. There were so many things, the gaslighting, the things that I had repressed, I finally see. And I had to find out why she was like that and why my dad was like that. And it gave me some compassion for who they were and why they did what they did. And then I had to forgive myself for the bad things that I did, because in Alaska, I was a juvenile delinquent and I hurt people. But regarding relinquishing my baby, I never really thought or felt that I needed to forgive myself until I'd finished the memoir. It was very interesting because, Mary and I have been reunion over 30 years. She's now 51. She lives in Michigan. Our parents flew her out for her 18th birthday. She has two daughters, and she's angry. She says it's not at me, but it's directed at me. And I feel that when she had her daughter's 21 now, but when she had her daughter, I flew out to Michigan to help her with a newborn, and I couldn't do anything right at all. Like, I felt like I was walking on eggshells. All I did is go in my room and cry. And she has been like that on and off pretty much since then. And I think there's some work that she needs to do. I was certainly depressed when at the end months when I was relinquishing her. It was horrible depression and rage that I was made to do something that went against my grain. And I really think that I transferred some of that to her. So this is the thing. It's very complex. It's complex being a birth mother. It's complex being an adoptee, and it's complex being a human being. There's a lot of complexities to just being alive. And there was a part in my book, my birth father, he's Cree in Canada, and his wife's Cree. My birth mother was Cree, but my grandfather on my birth mother's side was the alcoholic and Irish alcoholic. So I got that I'm a really happy drunk until you piss me off thing. But so he was a happy drunk. But I never was angry at her. But when I talked to my birth father's wife in 2020, we were on the phone, and she had a daughter, my half sister, who, when I met them, had a baby, and they kept that baby. And again, they're Cree, right? And he worked for the railroad, she worked for the post office, and my sister's now a meth addict, but she kept her child. And I remember talking to his wife, and I asked her why he didn't come to the hospital to see me when I was born. And that was something that was, when you read my memoir, you'll see these things, you'll understand. But I just didn't understand why he refused to see me when I was born, when he was called to see me. And I wanted to know maybe if my grandmother made my mother give me away. There's so many questions I didn't have. And she screamed at me through the phone. This is my birth father's wife, my half sister's mother. She goes, "You don't give away your own baby. You don't give away your own flesh and blood." And it was like it was knocked out of me. She would never have let Jenny give up her baby. Not in a million years. She never liked my grandmother. She didn't think, she had a poor opinion of me and my mother because we did that. And it was then that I mean, because this is so, we get so groomed by society about what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do, especially around adoption, as you know. And that's when I went, holy crap, you don't give away your own baby. What the hell, And so, but let's rewind that, because I believe in destiny. There's certain things that are destined to happen or destined to be. And I think that was one of them. I don't know why. I don't know for what purpose, but I can tell you that every awful thing that's ever happened to me has been my greatest gift, because I have been able to help others with that. And when I sit down with another woman that's suffering with, addiction or alcoholism, there's not one awful thing she could tell me that I haven't done or experienced and come through on the other side. It's like my pain was worth something. It still is worth something. And it's opened my heart. Uh I don't have anger, resentment, guilt, shame anymore. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's part of being old. I don't know. And it's part of doing the work, I guess. So there's a lot in there, and there's no direct answers to anything. It's all differently experienced by different people. We all come here with different DNA and different family backgrounds and different feelings. That's just how I managed. And if you want to write your story, journaling's fantastic. There's little writing groups, but having a somebody that can actually do the interviewing and ask you the questions, like a personal historian or a ghostwriter, that's great, because you have it and you can work through it in little bite-sized pieces. Any questions?
Thank you, Monica. You shared so much and I really appreciate it. The question that we had when somebody registered for the program, let me get back to that, is from a birth mother saying that she is interested in the self-forgiveness piece for birth mothers and wanted you to talk about that a little bit. So I know that was woven into your talk, but do you have any specific response that might be helpful for her?
Yes. So I had a lot to forgive myself for, not just the birth mother portion. I mean, I really did some damage in Alaska, but I have these pictures all over the house of me as a little girl. And, I can look at the picture on the girl on the cover of this book, and I can see her, and I can have compassion for that girl. And when I was writing, I didn't understand why I could have compassion for the little Monica, the one that was on the mantle on Santa's lap, or, the teenager, or the birth mother, when it was somebody else. But when it was me, I had a really hard time having compassion and forgiveness for that. And so what I've done, I reframe things in a way of, like, if when I'm working with somebody, if I had, like, how would you want your little girl, your daughter, or your little niece that you adore, what would you say to her? What would you tell her? Because for some reason, I wasn't able to separate myself from that little girl. I did what I did because I didn't have a choice. The way things looked, maybe I did have a choice, but that's not a choice. When it comes to this, there is no choice. There's so many layers and layers and layers of things that happen for us to make the decisions that we do or don't. And so I've done a lot of work, I've done a lot of writing, and I forgive that young girl, and when I see her as a young girl, and that's why she's like that on the cover, because that girl was broken. And the stamp that I do when I stamp my book and I do a signing, that little stamp, she's whole. There's a circle around her head and she's whole. She's no longer broken. And I know that that is a result of doing the work and doing the writing and looking at everything. Because if you break it down, because when we have trauma or when we have something happen, we only have a tunnel. We can't see everything else that came on, all the complexities that were woven into those situations. But you do when you write. You do. If you've got someone helping you, right? Whether it be a ghostwriter or a developmental editor, that gal, she was maybe 30. I don't even know, like maybe 30 something. She was a former professor and And I found her online, and that's what she did, nonfiction. And my mom and I were like, wow, are you a therapist? I mean, have you had therapy background? How do you know to ask these questions? She goes, no, that's just how we're trained. I'm like, I couldn't believe how incredible, insightful she was, stuff that I couldn't see. So I don't know if that answered it.
I
Anybody?
think that
Did it come
helps.
close?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a question about the process of writing, or, I was really struck, and I often am when I read a memoir, of like how much people disclose. And so I imagine that was difficult. You talk about having a lot of that kind of buried down, not just relinquishing your daughter or some of the adoption stuff, but like you said, some of the things that you did when you were younger and that type of thing. And so did the editor help you uncover that and push you to write it, or did you, like, once you got going, you wanted to get it all out, or somewhere in between?
No, no, I've been in recovery for a long time, and the way that we are shown to work through our stuff is to be honest. And I needed to tell all of it. I mean, there's some secrets I have that I don't write about, but they're personal. And this was very personal, and it was very honest. But also, it's really hard to have compassion for a victim. And I didn't want to be a victim. I was victimizing others, and things happened, a lot of which were part of my own making. And I'm just wired that way. I'm not your normal writer. Most writers are very sensitive. you know, they don't they don't share. They're introverts. I'm an extrovert. So I didn't have trouble with that. And I think it blew my editor away. She was like, wow, how can you do this? Wow. And I think that I tell the things that other people don't, so that they feel heard and seen, you know. It's like if I say what happened to me, I mean, I've had men that I knew or didn't know send me notes, or on my blog, I would write essays while I was writing, kind of like just to get stuff out. And some of it was about, the inner child. Some of it was about just things that happened, and really, really powerful writing. And I had a man message, I've never had a baby. I'm a guy. I've never, but I have had, loss. And your stuff helped me so much. It doesn't have to be about adoption. We all have loss. We all have shame, and we all have regrets. And when we hear somebody else tell the truth, we don't feel so alone. I know that works that way for me.
Definitely, as the reader, yes. Thank you. A question along the same kind of path. How did sharing so many, quote, secrets affect your relationship with your adoptive family? Or I would expand it even to
That's
other
a
people
great
in your
question.
life. Yeah.
Good question. So my mom was initially, she encouraged my search. And when I was pregnant, actually, and I started asking more about my birth mother. I thought nobody knew anything. And she said, well, there's stuff in the safe deposit box about your family, your mom and your parents. And so I had to be very careful. I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I didn't want to, scare her off, so she didn't go get those documents, because I wanted those documents. And then when I found my birth father, I'd forgotten, because I was super self-centered. I've probably always been self-centered, but think about it. I was only 23 years old when I found, and I was super excited. I was in the honeymoon stage, and my birth father seemed really nice. He was nice on the phone. My uncle was really nice. Everybody was kind, and I was excited. And I mentioned to my mom that I was going to send my birth father a birthday card and a Father's Day card, because they were 2 days apart, in June. And she was angry, and I don't really remember her being angry, although I read her journals. She gave them to me. and said, while I was writing my memoir, after she passed, I read those entries, and she was angry. And at the time, like, for instance, somebody came over, and I had just found my birth father, and it was a friend of hers who was often intoxicated when she came over. And I had mentioned Chaps, my father, so she'd know who I was referring to. And I guess my mom called me the next day, and she goes, well, when Kay was here, she said, huh, I was under the impression that Howard was her father, which was my adoptive father. And she was really mad at me. But I just blew it off because I thought, well, she wanted me to find. She's my mom. Like, she's my mom. Like, she's my mom. Like, why would you be worried? You're my mom. Like, but adoptive parents don't necessarily feel that way, and she had it in her journal, and there were some things that came out in the journal that were pretty horrific for me to read. But while I was writing the memoir, she was very supportive, and she was so supportive about walking me through the rape to see it as not my fault. I mean, she was an angel in many ways, but it's very tricky, the adoptive piece for adoptive parents, as it was for Mary's parents, And
Did
that's
you
the
have
daughter I relinquished. They named her Mary Claire. I named her Mary Monica after me. She got the same name, Virgin Mary. Did I answer that?
Yes, thank you. Did you have fallout from other people? Because, obviously lives are intertwined and, when you disclose a lot of different things, I know you have, from reading your book, I know that you have two childhood friends that you're, still friends with, they're friends with again now. And how did other people?
Yes, what I did is, Kelly was great. Kelly was my friend for the 2 years when I was going through that. She came from a very dysfunctional, abusive home, so she could see things the way I saw things. My other best friend didn't have those things, and she didn't quite understand why maybe you should stop writing. She didn't get it. She didn't understand, but she didn't have the experiences I did or Kelly did. But I offered everybody to change their name, and they could pick their name if they wanted. One of my best friends, who was originally in the memoir from here, didn't want to be in it, so I ixnayed her. And my sister in Canada wanted me to change her name, which I did. And then at the last minute, she wanted out. I said, sorry, no, you're not coming out. And I think that there's a little dysfunction there. So after I wrote this book, I actually cut a number of people out of my life. And I think that is so cool because one of the women that mentored me, she said, Monica, you're like the wife, the abused wife. He breaks, bloodies your lip and blacks your eye, and then he brings you flowers and you take him back. And I had been doing that for years with certain people. And when I finished this book, I have no problem cutting them out of my life. It's like I took her back. I did for her what nobody else could do. I'm taking care of her, and I want to now. I might be 67 years old and it's getting a little late, but I mean, better late than never, right?
Well, you're getting some real affirmations in the chat, so I'll make sure that I copy and paste the chat for you to have.
Yeah, I'm not looking at them.
One other question was, how have your adoptive experiences affected your marriage or marriages?
Oh, shit. Excuse me. I have a broken picker. Okay. So I'm not with anyone. I got married to the guy that helped me find my family. He was a drunk, and he was cheating a month after our wedding. So I left that relationship. And then I met a guy when I got sober who was supposed to be sober, and that's my daughter's father. And he moved out when she was a year old. He was not ready to be a father, and he was very mature and abusive. So that ended. And then I met my son's father. So all my kids have different fathers. And we were married 8 years, and there were issues, red flags that I saw that I just kind of blew by. And And so, no, I mean, I'm not married. I haven't really dated for a long time. I've been divorced since 2000. And that's 25 years. I had a relationship in there for about 8 or 9 years. But yeah, I really, I have a broken picker, and I was really hoping that it would be fixed when I finished writing this. It's like I had a thing on my forehead abuse me, to betray me, because that's how I grew up. And now I don't really care. I'm self-sufficient. I own my own home. I've been successful. Um, I'm helping others. My brother lives with me. He's my roommate. And I never thought that would happen, but it's worked out to be good, so you never know how things are going to turn out.
Well, thank you. I'm putting a couple links in the chat. The first one I just put in a minute ago is for a survey. Every time we have a Monday evening speaker, we'd like your thoughts, both about this evening and also about future topics or speakers if you have suggestions. So please, after we're done or now, take a second to fill that out. It's brief. And I also put a link for some of our other programs. So we have time for maybe one last question if anybody's got a burning question, or we can wrap up if you don't. Give it just a minute in case anybody's typing.
I just looked at the notes. Oh, one thing that you can do for authors, besides buy their book and share it with other people, is leave reviews. Huge for authors. I haven't had a review for a while, so read my book and give me a review. Even if it's a sentence, you know. And Alaska, somebody noted in the note chat that they were always open. I did get the paperwork that she filled out about my daughter, and it was a bunch of about me, as the birth parent, to give to the adoptive parents. A lot of it was lies. Catholic charities. Surprise.
Yeah. Was that I know you formed a relationship with the nun that you worked with during the pregnancy. That sounds like she facilitated the adoption. Do you think that's what she wrote down, or?
No, I think it's somebody that worked for her. I don't think it was Sister Claire. I've learned a lot more about Sister Claire recently. I mean, she was a lovely woman. She thought she was doing the right thing. And maybe she was. I mean, really, what do I know? I mean, Mary got really good parents, but she struggles. And she's also in recovery for 30 years. As is my other daughter, Becca, 14 years. It's like a family disease. So, and a doctor likely to have difficulty with that. And certainly birth mothers.
Oh. Yeah, well, thanks. The link that I put into Amazon up at the top, I don't think it actually came through with the title of the book or anything, but that is to the book, Practically Still a Virgin, if you're looking to look it up. And I don't know, is that also available through your website, Monica, or
Yeah, I'm
you could
trying to
have your
put in
bookstore
here.
order it?
Practically Still a Virgin. It reads like, it's so fun because I'm working on the second book right now. And I mean, it was already written. I just have to put it together. And I was too busy trying to, go to conferences and stuff. But ending each chapter like a Netflix series where you just gotta binge it. That's what so many people have said, it's a binger. And the chapters are short. So it's so fun to craft that. And that's what I'm doing. I really love writing, and it's not super awful to write some of this dark stuff because not all of it was in the first book, because it was already written. I've already gone through it, and now I just got to craft it and do some more scene and dialogue. And I don't know what I'm going to call it, but it's more about taking back your power. Or I don't know if I ever had power to take back, but I got it now.
So finding your power, yeah. Well, thank you. I want to remind everybody that we do have other Monday evening speakers coming up. The next one is on March 3rd. So I think that means we skip a week or not. I don't know. I don't have my calendar in front of me. And that's adoptee JJ Rhett talking about becoming enough. I think that'll be an excellent presentation as well. Thank you to everybody who joined us this evening, and thank you so much to Monica for volunteering your time to be here with us this evening, and we can't wait to have you in Cleveland in a few weeks. Just for everybody's knowledge, Adoption Network Cleveland is a nonprofit organization. We serve individuals and families that are touched by adoption, foster care, kinship care, etc., with support at education and advocacy. We are a membership organization, and so if you'd like to support our work and keep it going, you can join through our website. And we very much appreciate you having here. I'm going to end with a link to the conference since we've got that coming up, and we'd like many of you to consider joining us. So thank you. Thanks for being here.